My name is Denise D. Pond. I am 32. I work in finance operations. Stable job, decent income, not flashy. I dress clean, take care of myself, pay my bills. I'm not trying to be impressive. I'm trying to be consistent. My boyfriend, now my ex, is 29. We were together just over a year. From the beginning, he had a sharp tongue. I don't mean playful teasing. I mean comments that always landed slightly below the belt and were disguised as honesty. He liked to compare restaurants, vacations, careers, people, especially people. His favorite comparison was his ex-girlfriend. At first, it was subtle. He would mention how she had better style, how she understood high-end places, how she had ambition. He always added a qualifier. Things like, "But that doesn't matter anymore," or, "You're different in a good way." I let it slide. I assumed he was processing an old relationship out loud. Over time, the comparisons stopped being neutral. They became evaluative. She dressed better. She made more money. She knew how to treat someone properly. He said these things casually, like listing features on a product sheet. One night last week, we were sitting on my couch after dinner. He had wine. He was in that mood where he felt bold and superior. He started again, but this time he went all in. He said his ex-girlfriend dressed better than me, made more money than me, and treated him right. He said it with a half smile, like he expected me to argue or fold into insecurity. I didn't do either. I asked one question, calm, no sarcasm, no edge. I asked how they broke up. He rolled his eyes at first. Then he told me very casually, like it was nothing. And that answer changed everything. When I asked how they broke up, he laughed. Not nervous laughter, amused laughter, like he thought the story reflected well on him. He said she blindsided him. One day everything was fine, and the next day she just ended it. No yelling, no fighting, no drama. He said she told him he clearly thought he could do better, so she decided not to stand in his way. I remember the exact wording because it stuck with me. He said she told him good luck and walked away. He rolled his eyes after saying it and added that she was insecure and couldn't handle his standards. He said, "Women like that always leave when they realize they're replaceable." I didn't interrupt him. I didn't defend her. I didn't defend myself either. I just listened. Then he added something that sealed it. He said the worst part was that she never chased him, never checked back in, never tried to prove him wrong. She just disappeared and lived her life like he never mattered. He said it like it was an injustice. I asked him if he ever apologized to her. He said, "For what?" That was the moment my stomach settled into a calm, heavy certainty. Not anger, not heartbreak, clarity. He wasn't reminiscing. He was warning me, testing me, seeing how much disrespect I would swallow to keep him. He waited for my reaction. I could feel it. He wanted reassurance. He wanted me to say I was different, that I would try harder, that I would never leave like that. Instead, I nodded. I said that actually made sense. His expression changed, confusion first, then irritation. He asked what made sense. I told him that if he talked to her the way he was talking to me right now, I understood exactly why she left. The room went quiet. He said, "Wow, okay, so you're taking her side now." I said, "No, I'm just listening to you." He scoffed and said, "You're being dramatic." I stood up, grabbed my phone, and told him I needed some air. He laughed again and said, "See, this is what I mean. You can't handle honesty." I turned around and said, "No, I just learned how this ends." And I walked out. When I got home, I sat down and replayed the conversation without emotion. That's something I do when I need to be honest with myself. I strip out tone. I strip out intent. I look at facts. Fact 1, he compared me to his ex again, unprompted. Fact 2, he framed her as superior in money, appearance, and behavior. Fact 3, he described losing her as something unfair that happened to him, not a consequence of how he treated her. Fact 4, he showed zero curiosity about his role in that breakup. That pattern wasn't accidental. Around midnight, he texted me. He said I overreacted. He said I twisted his words. He said I should be grateful he was honest instead of pretending. I replied once, just once. I said I wasn't upset. I said I was paying attention. That annoyed him more than anger ever would have. He called immediately. I let it ring. Then he sent a longer message explaining that he was just expressing standards and that if I wanted to be with someone like him, I needed to step up. He said his ex understood that until she got insecure. That's when the irony became impossible to ignore. He didn't miss her. He missed the power dynamic. He missed being admired without accountability. He missed having someone absorb comparison without consequence. And now he was reenacting the same script with me. The difference was I had just watched the ending. I went to bed without replying again. The next morning, I woke up calm. No knots in my stomach, no urge to defend myself, just a simple decision waiting to be executed. I knew exactly how this relationship was going to end. He already told me. I had decided to believe him. I didn't end it that morning. Not yet. I wanted to see if he would recognize what he'd done without me spelling it out. That mattered to me more than revenge or proving a point. He didn't. By noon, he was texting like nothing happened. Memes, a comment about lunch, a reminder about plans later in the week. It was like the conversation from the night before had been filed away as me being sensitive and therefore irrelevant. That told me everything I needed to know. That evening, he came over to my place like nothing had shifted. No apology, no check-in. Just that performative normal he used when he assumed he still had leverage. He kicked off his shoes, opened my fridge, and commented that I should really update my wardrobe if I wanted to move up at work. Same tone, same casual superiority. I asked him to sit down. He sighed like I was inconveniencing him and said, "Okay, what is this about?" I told him I'd been thinking about what he said about his ex, about how she dressed better, made more money, and treated him right. I told him I believed him. A small, satisfied smile crossed his face, like he thought this was the part where I asked how to improve. Then I said, "And I also believe her." The smile dropped. I told him that based on his own story, she did exactly what someone should do when they realize they're being compared and resented instead of respected. She left cleanly. She didn't argue. She didn't compete. She didn't try to win him back. I told him I understood why that drove him crazy. He snapped immediately. He said I was projecting. He said I was insecure. He said I was nowhere near her level anyway, so I shouldn't flatter myself by copying her. I nodded, same as before. I told him this wasn't a discussion. I told him I was ending the relationship, that I wasn't angry, that I wasn't trying to punish him, that I was simply opting out of a dynamic where I was constantly being measured against someone else. He laughed, actually laughed. He said, "You're not serious." I stood up and said, "I am." I walked him to the door and said, "Good luck." That's when the panic started. At first, it looked like disbelief. He stood in my doorway staring at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. Then he started bargaining. He said I was being impulsive, that I was throwing something good away over one conversation, that couples are supposed to challenge each other, that I was proving his point about being insecure. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I repeated one sentence calmly. I said I wasn't competing with a ghost. That's when his tone shifted. He accused me of copying his ex to hurt him, said it was manipulative, said I was trying to punish him by leaving the same way. He told me it was pathetic to model myself after a woman who couldn't keep him. I told him I wasn't modeling myself after her. I was responding to him. He stepped closer and said, "You'll regret this. You think you're making some strong move, but you're just proving you're replaceable." I said, "Okay." That word hit him harder than anything else. He expected a reaction. He expected me to flinch. When I didn't, he switched tactics. He started crying. Real tears this time. He said he was just being honest with me, that he wanted me to grow, that he chose me, that he could have stayed with her, but didn't. I asked him why. He froze. Then he said, "Because she left." I opened the door. I told him I wasn't mad at him, that I appreciated his honesty, and that I was ending this the same way it ended before because the pattern was the same. No yelling, no insults, no long speech. I said, "Good luck." He stood there shaking, waiting for me to soften. I didn't. He left. And within an hour, my phone started blowing up. The first wave was anger. Missed calls stacked on my screen. Long texts sent back to back. He accused me of planning it, of waiting for the right moment to humiliate him, of being weak for copying his ex instead of facing him like an adult. I didn't respond. Then came confusion. He asked if I was serious, if this was really happening, if I needed space, if we were actually done. The questions overlapped, tripping over each other. He sounded like someone trying to reverse time by sheer volume. I stayed quiet. By midnight, the tone shifted again. Apologies, but not clean ones. Conditional apologies. I'm sorry if you felt compared. I'm sorry if my honesty hurt you. That wasn't what I meant. I read them once and put my phone down. The next morning, I blocked him. No announcement, no warning, just removed access. Phone, messaging apps, socials, everything. I wasn't doing it to be cruel. I was doing it because I'd already seen how this played out, when the door stayed cracked open. He didn't handle the silence well. By that afternoon, mutual contacts started reaching out. People asking what happened. People saying he was spiraling. People saying he didn't understand how I could just disappear. One message stood out. A mutual friend said, He keeps saying he can't believe you didn't fight for him. That made me laugh, not because it was funny, but because it was revealing. Fight for what? A role where I was constantly being measured against someone else. A relationship where respect was conditional on outperforming a memory. He didn't miss me. He missed the validation. He missed having someone to push against. And now there was no surface left. That's when the unraveling began. It wasn't loud. No public meltdown. No dramatic confrontation. Just a slow leak of control he couldn't stop. He started reaching out through other people. Friends I barely knew. A coworker he'd mentioned once. Even my cousin, who he followed on social media but had never spoken to. Different versions of the same message. He wants closure. He doesn't understand what happened. He just wants to talk like adults. I declined all of it. Not rudely, not defensively. Just no. What surprised me was how quickly the narrative around him started to crack once I wasn't participating. Without me reacting, he had nothing to bounce off of. Without a villain actively engaging, his story lost momentum. A mutual friend told me he kept repeating the same line. She left me the same way my ex did. Like that was the injustice. Not why it happened. Just that it happened again. Someone finally asked him if maybe there was a common denominator. He didn't like that. Once that question landed, everything around him started to unravel faster. Not publicly, not in some dramatic explosion, but quietly, which was worse for him. He became fixated on the similarity he couldn't control. 2 different women, 2 different timelines. Same ending. No yelling, no chasing, no second chances. Just a clean exit after being compared and diminished. I heard updates without asking for them, the way you always do when someone loses control of a story they used to dominate. He kept framing it as bad luck, as women who couldn't handle his standards, as people who misunderstood his honesty. But the room had changed. People were starting to notice patterns instead of excuses. One mutual told me he was spiraling over the comparison he created himself, that he couldn't stop talking about how unfair it was that 2 relationships ended the same way, that he kept insisting it was coincidence, that women like that just leave when they realize they can't measure up. No one nodded along anymore. Another friend said he tried dating again almost immediately. App screenshots, first date stories, the usual distraction cycle. But something was different. He kept bringing up his exes, both of them, framing us as women who wanted to be admired without accountability. People stopped engaging with that narrative. Once a pattern becomes visible, it's hard to unsee. Meanwhile, my life got simpler. No tension before speaking. No internal math about whether a comment would be used against me later. No sense that I needed to outperform a memory to earn baseline respect. One night, I sat on my couch and realized my shoulders weren't tight anymore. I hadn't even noticed they were before. He tried one last angle through email. Professional, polite, almost detached. He wrote that he'd been reflecting, that he understood now why things fell apart, that he wasn't asking to get back together, just asking for closure, a conversation. 10 minutes, coffee, neutral ground. I read it twice, not because I was tempted, because I was paying attention to what wasn't there. No ownership, no accountability, no acknowledgement of the comparison, the entitlement, the way he expected admiration without consequence. It was framed like a mutual misunderstanding time and maturity could smooth over. I didn't reply. That's when the silence finally did what no argument ever could. Without my reaction, without my reassurance, without my anger, he had nothing to push against. The narrative stalled. The audience thinned. The control slipped. And that was the moment I knew this was really over. The last update reached me without me asking for it, the way real updates always do. A friend I trust told me he finally said something out loud that didn't sound like a performance. He said he couldn't understand why people kept leaving him when he was just being honest. That phrasing mattered. Just being honest was how he justified comparison. Just being honest was how he excused disrespect. Just being honest was how he avoided responsibility for how his words landed. My friend told him something he didn't want to hear, that honesty without care isn't honesty, it's entitlement. And comparing your partner to someone else isn't motivation, it's erosion. Apparently he went quiet after that. No clever comeback, no reframing, no joke to soften it. Silence. That was new for him. I heard he tried dating again almost immediately. The same cycle, the same stories, the same emphasis on standards. But once people see a pattern, it's hard to unsee it. Conversations dried up. Interest faded. He couldn't control the ending anymore. Meanwhile, nothing dramatic changed in my life. No glow up, no sudden relationship, just space. just quiet, just the absence of being measured against a ghost. I started noticing how my body felt different, how I spoke without bracing, how I didn't replay conversations afterward to see where I'd gone wrong. I hadn't been wrong. I'd been accommodating. One night, I sat on my couch and thought about the moment he said his ex dressed better, made more money, and treated him right. At the time, it felt like a dig. Now it felt like a confession. He didn't want a partner. He wanted a benchmark, someone he could stand above and critique to feel secure. And the moment I refused to play that role, the whole structure collapsed. The first thing he tried to do was rewrite history. He told people the breakup came out of nowhere, that I'd been distant, that I never communicated, that he was shocked I'd walk away without trying to fix things. None of that was true, but I didn't correct it. When you stop participating, people start comparing notes. More than one person remembered how often he talked about his ex, how he compared people like resumes, how he framed relationships as upgrades and downgrades instead of partnerships. Someone finally asked him a question he couldn't dodge. Why do women keep leaving you the same way? He didn't answer that one. I realized then that I hadn't lost anything of value. I'd gained time, quiet, self-respect. The absence of constant evaluation felt like relief in my chest. One night, I caught myself smiling for no reason. And that's when it clicked. I'd been tense for a long time without realizing it. The comparison was gone. The performance was gone. The test was over. And I passed it by walking away. I'm writing this last part because stories like this usually end with regret or some dramatic twist. This one ends quieter than that. A few weeks after everything settled, I thought about his ex again. Not with jealousy, not with comparison, with understanding. I finally understood why she left the way she did, why she didn't argue, why she didn't try to prove him wrong, why she walked away clean and never looked back. She listened. He told her who he was the same way he told me, through comparison, through entitlement, through a belief that honesty excused cruelty and standards justified disrespect. She believed him. So did I. The difference is that this time he had to watch it happen twice. I didn't leave to teach him a lesson. I didn't do it to mirror his past out of spite. I left because once you see a pattern clearly, staying becomes self-betrayal. I heard he's still losing his mind, not because he lost me specifically, but because he lost the narrative. Two women leaving the same way breaks the story he tells himself about being unlucky in love. It forces a different question, and he isn't ready to ask it. As for me, my life didn't explode. It simplified. I stopped shrinking. I stopped competing with memories. I stopped auditioning for respect. If someone tells you their ex was better than you in every way, listen carefully. Not to compete, not to defend yourself. Listen for the ending, because sometimes they aren't reminiscing. They're rehearsing, and this time I believed it.